Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to our Saturday edition here in World of Warships. We're going to be doing an upgrading commander build on the Moskva today. We're going to be looking at her armor scheme, looking at the modules, upgrades, consumables, and most importantly, the commander skills. So, we're going to hop right into it. So first off, we need to ask the question of what type of cruiser is Moskva? Moskva is a heavy cruiser. Her project intentions was that she were to hunt enemy light cruisers, but also she could handle herself against heavy cruisers as well. And her armor scheme tells a lot about her. Bow on, you are a really strong cruiser. Between this icebreaker belt, 50 millimeter, and then 25 millimeter on top, so it's a little bit weaker up there. But you can tank a lot of damage bow, and you saw that in yesterday's video, which will be clipped here at the end. A little tag if you want to go check out this yesterday, where I illustrated tanking 3 Kremlins and a Minotaur in the channel of 2 brothers. But she's tanky bow on. However, in some ways, how she feels like a light cruiser is her Citadel armor is massive. If you get caught out broadside, you will be punished to the extreme. I mean, she has this huge above water Citadel. If she had a below water Citadel, this ship would definitely be too OP. It kind of is pretty strong, especially when you pair her with Kuznetsov. But imagine this is probably Wargaming's way of kind of scaling the cards back in other players' favors. But if you get caught out broadside or just showing too much side, you will get wrecked by battleships and cruisers alike, as you will just eat Citadels for breakfast. That's how it works. So Moskva is a heavy cruiser where positioning is huge. If you miss position, you will get punished for it, essentially. So you have to be really mindful of your positioning when you're starting off a battle and approaching where you want to be at. All right, so let's look at the modules and upgrades. This is my first time doing one of these videos since the patch economy rework update of 11.6. So I'm going to try to keep it how I would normally go over it, just they've reshuffled things on me. So first, starting off with the guns, you have 2 and 20 millimeter guns. Right now with the build I have, we have a 9.1 second reload, 180 degree turn time of 32.1 seconds, 3100 HE shell damage, 6090 AP shell damage. So her guns are phenomenal. They're really sweet spot. You can reach out in Citadel cruisers long range. I think you saw that in yesterday's video and the ranked match I highlighted with Moskva. Just really potent guns. Her hull is 65,400. So actually, if you think of in terms of tier 8 battleship, she's got pretty much the same health as a tier 8 battleship would. I think, for example, the Massachusetts has 66,300. So she's up there in terms of her health pool. She has a very large health pool for a tier 10 cruiser. So really good stuff there. Your gunfire control system, right now we have a range of 19.4 kilometers, but I'm going to talk about even extending this out further. Because these guns have such a fast shell travel time, their shell velocity is faster than, of course, the Des Moines. It's even faster than the Stalingrad. So it doesn't take very long for your shells to reach range and punch ships. Even maybe ships are trying to speed juke you, you can catch them off guard and slap them for some pretty decent damage. She also has a robust speed that you can get up even further, 34.5 knots. If we throw on the Sierra Mike flag, we're over 36 knots, 36.2 knots. So you can definitely position yourself quite well. This is even faster than the Minotaur, if I'm not mistaken, the tier 10 British light cruiser. So let's talk about her upgrades. So what I'm going to recommend is taking the main armaments modification 1. The risk of your main battery becoming incapacitated, negative 20%, main battery survivability, plus 50%, and main battery repair time, negative 20%. You really need this because of the guns of the Moskva. They're rather weakly armored, and in yesterday's video, they actually had a turret get knocked out. Front on, you're like, okay, 300 millimeters, not so bad, but the sides, man, the sides, 180, and then you go to the top, 145, 135 on the back slope. So these guns are quite vulnerable, 265 on the back, so that's not so bad, but they're very vulnerable on the sides, and they can still be knocked out head on with large enough shells. So you really want to reduce any risk of that main battery becoming incapacitated. So I really recommend that. Your auxiliary armaments modification 1 just increases the survivability of your AA mount in your secondary. Don't recommend this for Moskva, nor do I recommend the magazine modification 1. Risk of your ship's magazine detonating, -70%. If you're playing randoms, ranked clan battles, you're going to be wanting to run the Juliet Charlie combat signal, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. And I don't recommend the damage control party modification either. For the slot 2, there's 2 standard upgrades, and then you can run a special upgrade. So the first being the damage control system modification 1. If you don't have the coal resources to pick up a special upgrade, I would probably just recommend damage control system modification 1 because it reduces the risk of catching fire by -5%, risk of flooding, -3%. You also have the engine room protection, but I don't really find my engine or my steering gears haven't had the issue of them getting knocked out. What I recommend overall is the surveillance radar modification 1. This extends the action time of your radar by 20%. So right now our radar is 36 seconds. Okay, it would be beneath, I think, 30 seconds if I'm not mistaken, or at 30 seconds if we were not running this. Because you have this very strong Russian radar, 12 kilometers, and the longer it lasts, the more you're able to get some salvos off and helping your team maybe finish off that destroyer or cruiser that's at range in the smoke. If you're wondering, how do you get it? Because I already have it equipped, I can just click on one of these others. It takes you into the armory where you look at upgrades, and you are able to purchase these for coal, okay? So I come in here, surveillance radar modification 1, 17,000 coal. However, if you wait and use an upgrade coupon, you can take 25% off, so it only costs you 12,500. I used my coupon actually last night or the other night to pick this up for Minotaur because I run Radar Minotaur and I absolutely love it. You also have the defensive AA. There are other cruisers that do the AA role better and have a stronger AA defense than the Moskva does. For example, something like the Minotaur, the Worcester for sure, the tier 10 American light cruiser. You also have hydroacoustic search modification 1. Does the same thing, extends the action time. I run the hydro radar mash up here, but really the radar is where I would recommend 10 times over as being the best out of all these options here. Then you have the slot 3. So we have a couple things going on here. You have your main battery modification 2, improves your main battery traverse speed by plus 15%. So that means that 180 degree turret traverse time is going to be, that would be beneath 30 seconds in this scenario. And then you have secondary battery modification. If you're trying to do a secondary build, but you don't want to do a secondary build on Moskva, like if you wanted to do a secondary build on a cruiser, a tier 10, something like the Hindenburg would be better for that role. And again, we're not investing in the AA for reasons I already spoke on. What I have decided to run is the aiming systems modification 1. Now, there's a special reason I have this in mind, and we'll talk about that in the 6th slot. But what it does is it improves your main battery shell dispersion, so -7%. So you're getting even tighter horizontal and vertical dispersion. Doesn't change your sigma with Moskva. Sigma is just the likelihood of your the chances of that shell landing in the center of where you're aiming. But what this does is improves your vertical and horizontal dispersion. So you're getting slightly tighter groupings by that -7%. And that's really good. And especially when you're, as a tier 10 cruiser, the range you have is really good at tier 10. I think it might even be the best unless you're trying to do some sort of range build on some sort of other cruiser. But standard speaking, the stock range you have on Moskva is really great. And with that shell velocity travel time, you can reach out, punch targets at range, especially cruisers. You also get the added bonus of a secondary battery firing range plus 5% and maximum secondary battery shell dispersion -5%. So this is what I recommend. For your fourth slot, I'm going to recommend the Damage Control Systems Modification 2. This reduces your fire extinguishing time by -15%, flooding recovery time, -15%, because often Moskva is this tier 10 cruiser that can tank really well, and she has a standard fire time. So if you get set on fire, it's just the standard, where something like the Stalingrad, you burn for that much longer. So she can play these tank positioning, so she's very hard to get out of a, if you're covering 2 caps or 1 cap with your radar and you've got your hydroacoustic search, she's very hard to pry out of position. So you want to build into the tankiness, be that much more tanky of a Russian cruiser. You have also propulsion modification 1. Don't recommend that. Steering gears, I mean, that could be nice. Your rudder shift time is 10.9 seconds, but your turning circle radius is abysmal. It's over 1,000 meters, and that is terrible for a tier 10 cruiser. So she's not maneuverable by any means. I still wouldn't recommend these two, nor this for the depth charges. You really want to build more into the tankiness of Moskva. Here on the 5th slot, I am running the Concealment System Modification 1. I'm going to ignore Torpedo System Lookout. It's just not worth running on Moskva. But what this does is it reduces the ship's detectability range by 10%, also by air by 10%, and dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship plus 5%. So with the exterior camouflage rework, you no longer get that plus 4% when you ran a camouflage. They just did away with that completely. So here you get that plus 5%. So it's better than nothing for sure. And your concealment in Moskva is just, it's so terrible. It's the worst. If you took this off right now, our concealment would be over 15 kilometers. I even have concealment on the commander to get me down to 14.1. You have a very terrible concealment. It's the worst of all tier 10 cruisers in the game, unless you go for a lighthouse build. Again, I'm talking about stock standard. So when you're trying to position and getting into that good island coverage, you have to sell maybe show a lot of side, show broadside. Kind of, I was illustrating in the live commentary yesterday, go to the side of the map you want to be on, and then turn in and walk down. So you're kind of staying in spawn for a little bit at the beginning, just because you have that hugely vulnerable citadel. So we want to be able to be concealed enough to get into where we want to be at in terms of positioning on the map. Yeah, steering gears modification 2. I don't recommend that for Moskva. You also have ship consumables modification that extend the action time of your consumables, but I don't recommend that either. You're going to get so much use out of having the concealment system modification 1. Now, on the 6th slot, right now I have the main battery modification 3. So this improves our main battery reload time. So that's how I'm getting that 9.1 second reload right now, without adrenaline rush taking account. But we also take this skill with the cost of our main battery traverse speed is worse, that minus 13%. So that's the 32.7 seconds you're seeing reflected here. This is just really good. If you don't have access to picking up the unique upgrade, which I'll hit on in a minute. So this is what I recommend for you to run on Moskva. Also because of the captain's skill, I'm going to highlight, works really well with this upgrade. You also have the gunfire control system modification 2. This extends your main battery firing range. I would ask you, why run this when your range is already so good on the Moskva? When you can go for the damage per minute. We are going to be talking about extending the range, but in a different way here in just a moment. Then you have auxiliary armaments modification 2. Secondary battery reload time, continuous AA damage, yada yada yada. This again is for something more of an AA cruiser driven. That is not the Moskva by any means. She has a good AA, it's decent, but it isn't the Moskva. You want to run a light cruiser again. Okay, so this skill right here, the extended main battery effective range. Now, I just talked about, I was just kind of hating on why extend your range, because you already have such good range. But it's not so much the range with this skill that I want to hit on with, it's your main battery shell dispersion. It's negative 7% if you take this unique upgrade. This is in the Armory, or the Research Bureau, where you pick this up for Research Bureau points. And this unique upgrade is really good on Moskva, because when you get this negative 7% main battery shell dispersion and you stack it with this one, you're essentially getting negative 14% main battery shell dispersion. And it's really good, and it comes with the added benefit of extending your main battery firing range by plus 8%. So then you would be able to hit targets that are further than 20 kilometers away. But really, you're probably going to be dealing with ships that are closer. But the shell dispersion, you're getting that even tighter vertical and horizontal dispersion. So I recommend this if you are able to pick it up. So if we click on it, we'll go into the Research Bureau. And maybe you're like, Flimsy, what the heck are you talking about? I've never heard of this Research Bureau before. If you're a newer player, it's likely you do not have access to the Research Bureau. You have to, there's two ways you can gain access to Research Bureau. You have to have at least 5 tier 10 ships in the game. Or you have to have had, maybe you picked up some Research Bureau points from a dockyard event or something, and you got earlier access than normal. I have a whole video on the Research Bureau, mainly talking about the ships there. No, I think I just talked about the Research Bureau in general. I don't remember. Anyhow, but you have these special upgrades in here for the different ships. And here you have for Moskva. So for 19,200 research points, you can pick up this skill. Okay, I remember the video I have. It's about farming these research points. I'll throw that at the end. So you can see I need 9,701 to pick this up. I'm working right now. I'm stacking resets on the Shimakaze, the Japanese destroyer line. So I don't know how soon I'll actually end up picking up this skill. But this is a really good skill. There used to be an additional buff to this, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't remember what the other buff was. And I think Wargaming nerfed it. So this is worth picking up, but if you don't have access to Research Bureau, you don't have the Research Bureau points like myself, the main battery modification 3 is what I would recommend. This would be number 2. But this is really good. But if you want to save up the Research Bureau points, picking up ships and stuff instead, then you're just fine with the main battery modification 3. All right, consumables. So damage control party, action time 5 seconds, reload time 60 seconds. Nothing crazy happening there. Your repair party, HP per second, 327. But if we run the India Delta combat signal, we're going to be able to get that up to 392. Action time, 28 seconds. Reload time, minute in 20 seconds. And we have 4 consumables. And I'll talk about that with the commander. And then you have the option to run either defensive AA fire or the hydroacoustic search. Typically, the hydroacoustic search is going to be your better route to go because every game you can guarantee there's going to be torpedoes. Like 95% of the time, there's always going to be torpedoes because it seems like every class gets torpedoes these days. Goes all around, right? But you might not always get your benefit out of the defensive AA fire because of there being no carriers. So when I was playing Moskva, or I was playing Thursday night, a lot of battles, I think there's only ran into 2 carriers out of like 10 randoms matches I had, something like that. So the hydroacoustic search was more beneficial when I was running Moskva in those situations. Because it has you can pick up torpedoes 3.5 kilometers away, detection of ships 5 kilometers away. Okay. Then you have the surveillance radar. It's that really good Russian radar, 12 kilometers. We have an action time of 36 seconds because we've been building into a radar. Reload time of 2 minutes, and we have 4 of those consumables. So that is what I would, this is how I would equip. Run the hydroacoustic search. All right, so let's go look at the commander. Now I have Nikolay Kuznetsov. he is probably the best commander you can pick up in the army for 175,000 coal, simply because he has some pretty ridiculous talents, which you saw me activate a couple times in yesterday's video. The Wheel for Victory talent. This is the main thing that makes Kuznetsov so good. It can be activated only once per battle, but when your ship's HP or health pool falls below 10%, this talent will activate. Your HP per second will be plus 0.25%, and the action time is 30 seconds. So you can actually heal back a large or a good portion of health, not a large portion, but a good portion of health. But it slowly ticks over time, 30 seconds. So if you see a Russian ship and he's about dead and you see this firework launch, if he has the personalization showing, because you can deactivate it, then that means he has Kuznetsov if you didn't catch his red shell tracers, and you need to focus him down or he's going to get some health back. The other two benefits to this is the dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship is plus 20%, so enemies have an even harder time landing shells on you. And then the really cool thing is the extinguishing fires, it removes flooding, and repairs any damaged modules instantly. So it's like having a damage control party. And a lot of times when you're that low of health, it's likely your damage control party is probably on cooldown. So having this talent activate is huge, because usually it's a fire or flood that dips you down in at 10%, as an example. So this talent is just wickedly good. The other one is the emergency reserve. When you get the first blood achievement, you get an additional charge for all of your consumables. So instead of having just 4 hydros, 4 surveillance radars, 4 repair parties, we get 5, right? So this is really good talent on Kuznetsov, because we're getting a lot of use, because we have 3 different consumables here with the Moskva. So these talents are just wickedly good. Kuznetsov is really fantastic, and you can pick him up for 175,000 coal, and I would definitely recommend that you do that. Now, in terms of the commander, so right now we have a 16-point commander. I need to get 5 more points, get him up to a 21-point commander, but I'll show you what I would recommend starting off with here. So first, I have Grease the Gears. It's the main battery traverse speed plus 15%. So this helps set off that nerf we took in running the reload time in the 6th upgrade slot. So this helps us to be at that 32 seconds versus being at something like 40 seconds, which would be really, it would hurt more in that scenario. You know, when we had that Petropavlovsk in yesterday's video who kind of came around the island trying to get on our side, we were able to keep up with our turrets just fine and then some. So I recommend this for your first point skill. For a 3-point commander, priority target is what I'd recommend. The detection indicator additionally shows the number of opponents on the enemy team that are currently aiming at your ship with their main battery guns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. This is really important just because of that vulnerable side citadel you have. Or if you're being focused by 4 or 5 ships, that means maybe you need to disengage, maybe reverse behind the island you're in, or just go dark, because you will not live long in a Moskva. I mean, you are very tanky, but when you have 4 or 5 ships that are focusing you, any ship is going to melt under that pressure eventually. And then for a 6-point commander, I'd probably just recommend picking up the Adrenaline Rush. Enhance the ship's parameter for each 1% of HP lost. So your main battery reload time is getting reduced. Your secondary battery reload time is getting reduced. And then you're also getting a slight buff on your AA damage. But it's likely shells have probably knocked out some of your AA, so you can think of it as status quo or still less than 100% AA capability on your ship. So this is just a good skill in general, just to help get that reload time down even further. And then for 10-point, I'd recommend picking up the Consumer Expert. So this is what ultimately gets us beneath that 15 kilometers, so 14.1 kilometers. If we didn't run this, we would be over 15 kilometers. If we didn't run the concealment on the 5th slot, we would be over 16 kilometers detectability, if maybe not 17. So for a 10-point commander, those are the skills I'd recommend. For a 13-point commander, I would then recommend you pick up Superintendent. You have that additional hydroacoustic search, radar, repair party. That's just going to help you be in the battle that much longer. So I definitely recommend that here. And then for a 16-point, I'd recommend picking up the heavy AP shells. Main battery AP shell damage with a main battery caliber of 190 millimeters and above, plus 5%. And we have on the Moskva, we have this 220 millimeter gun, so we're definitely getting the benefit out of the heavy AP shells here. You could decide that maybe you want to wait and pick up this this skill here if you're following the trajectory I'm showing you. And then for 17 points, you pick up this and don't pick up heavy AP shells. But regardless, if you do go this route, this is what I'm going to recommend you pick up next. It's the top grade gunner. You get the permanent effect of your secondary battery reload time being reduced by -10%. But it's the can be activated skill that gets quite useful here with Moskva because of her poor concealment. This increases the reload time of the main battery if there's a visible enemy ship within your ship's standard detectability range. So your standard detectability range is the 14.1 kilometers here on the Moskva. And changes to ship detectability caused by firing main guns, fires on board, and other combat events are not taken into account. So if there's just an enemy ship within your standard detectability range, meaning within 14.1 kilometers of your ship, this top grade gunner skill will activate, okay? So main battery reload time is -8%. Now, this skill and how poor your concealment means you're pretty much always getting a benefit out of this skill. Even in yesterday's video, where I showed you those random battle, the ranked battle, and even that convoy match I showed you right at the beginning, just to illustrate the tankiness and weakness of Moskva, we would have been getting use out of this. So basically it means you're taking 0.7 seconds off your reload time. So if I reduce that, so your 8.4 seconds or just 8 beneath 8.4 seconds, not taking into account adrenaline rush. So these two skills together work really well. They also work really well together with your main battery modification 3 and the 6 slot. So when we're building the Moskva, we're trying to build into different upgrades and different skills going on with our commander. For your last skill point, being a 21-point commander, I'd recommend picking up the incoming fire alerts. As I talked about in the beginning of the randoms battle live commentary I did, positioning early on is really important. So it's important to know when you're showing too much side or broadside, is there a ship targeting you? Did someone just fire at you? Just because of how vulnerable your citadel, I mean, it's that huge above water citadel. So having this information is really beneficial. So as of now, this is the 21-point route I intend to go. Now, if you're wondering, was there some other little differences here I might recommend? Maybe. I've seen some people like to take Gunfeeder. Maybe you want to take Gunfeeder if you're running Kuznetsov on some other cruisers as well, and you want that quick reduction in switching between shell type to high explosive, armor piercing. In this scenario, we have a 9.1 second reload. So if I do math, that just means we're shaving that 9.1 seconds in half. I'm not going to go into the math. I can't think right now. So you could do that. Normally what I do, I don't feel the need for this in Moskva, so I just would rather run the incoming fire alert because your HE is good, your AP is good, so I'll just switch after I've fired my guns to the other shell type that I so desire. Another thing you could do is you could drop priority target, and you could pick up Consumables enhancement. This gives you an extension on your hydroacoustic search and your radar. So then your radar is going to go from 36 seconds to 39.6 seconds. So almost a 40-second radar when you run this. So this is something I might potentially look at doing down the road because I really like extending the action time on my radar on really good ships, you know, like the Des Moines, Alaska, and these this longer lasting radar here on the Moskva. So if I can get that up a little bit more, then Yeah, so I'm gonna have to see how this goes. If I feel comfortable enough to drop priority target and pick up consumables enhancements, also longer hydroacoustic search wouldn't hurt anybody. But just because of how fragile, again, your side armor is, your broadside is, I don't feel comfortable enough yet to do that. Also, when you're running priority target, it gives you the benefit of knowing maybe you're dealing with a destroyer and you're getting flashed. So it's 1, no one targeting you, 1, no one targeting you, 1, no one targeting you. It means that destroyer is likely dumping torpedoes on you at that moment. So then you can take some invasive maneuvers, cut the throttle, so on and so forth. Would I recommend something else? I wondered about the idea of dropping Concealment Expert and going with another skill. For example, you could drop Concealment Expert, still pick up the top grade gunner, but then you use these 4 points and you pick up Consumables enhancement. So 2 points, you have 2 points remaining, and then you could pick up Focus Fire Training, or you could use those other 2 points here on these 1-pointer skills. Last stand's important, especially if your engine gets knocked out or steering gears incapacitated. I haven't had that issue in playing the Moskva so far, so that's not a big concern for me. But you would be over 15-kilometer concealment, so again, I don't recommend that. This is the build I would recommend first and foremost here on the Moskva. So we've done just over 30 minutes, so that's going to bring this video to a close. Let me know what you're running on the Moskva. If you have any questions about a skill I didn't talk about, you can ask in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond to you. But I hope you appreciated this video and looking at the Moskva. She's a really fun ship. I've been getting used to her more and more, but I think I kind of like Des Moines and Minotaur a bit better. That's just me. But Moskva's a really great Russian ship, and you'll see her a lot in the competitive meta just because of how tanky she is, that 12-kilometer radar, hydroacoustic search, and she's one of the best coal ships you can pick up in the armory. Yeah, she's among the top 3 at least, just going off the top of my head. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we will catch you next time. Take care.